space where we challenge outdated narratives and lean into more ways of supporting neurodivergent individuals. I'm your host, Sonja, the head of the Oakley House Training and Support Center, a neurodivergent advocate and a mother of two incredible children, and a professional who spent almost 2 decades walking alongside families, educators, and children on this journey. Today, we're joined by Annelize van Niekerk, optometrist and visual stress screener, to discuss a topic that many of us and our children might be affected by without us even being aware. Today we are talking about visual stress syndrome and how it affects learning, reading, and daily life, a topic that has recently become very personal to me. Annelize, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Sonja. Thank you for inviting me to talk about this wonderful topic.
So let's just kick off. Can you maybe, Annelize, start by just telling us a bit more about yourself and maybe your background in optometry?
I graduated in Joburg in 2001 and moved down to Cape Town and started my practice and my family down here in Cape Town. I have 2 beautiful boys in high school, and they are one of the reasons why I started thinking of visual stress and colorimetry. My one son had some learning difficulties when he was about 10, 11 years old, when they start learning in grade 4. And I tried everything to figure out what is happening and how I can help him in an alternative way, not with a conventional giving a tablet way. So I found Erlen, and alongside Erlen, I came on colorimetry that taught me more about visual stress. And it's fascinating how visual stress itself can help our children and ourselves if we suffer from visual stress syndrome. So it's amazing. I love this.
So can you maybe please explain to us exactly what visual stress is?
Visual stress is when a visual stimuli is causing the visual cortex to behave in a not normal way. Normal meaning we see words, one word after another in lines and not bundle up. So your visual cortex gets confused with visual stimuli, and the visual stimuli that might be problematic might be repetitive lines, repetitive lights, fluorescent lights, anything that is very close together, like a palisade fencing when you're driving, or bright fluorescent lights in classrooms. All those things can cause visual stress in a person. The visual stress causes the visual cortex in the brain to get confused. And that confusion can lead to words being blurry, moving on the page, the person seeing blobs of color or halos, or having a lot of migraines and headaches that's not normal for a younger age. And the visual stress filters that we use calms down the individual cortex so that the person can see the visual world, whether it's reading, whether it's walking, whether it's driving, in a more calm, comfortable manner.
So by the sound of it, Annelize, it sounds like it is the way that the brain interprets vision or what they see. So can someone have 20/20 vision and still struggle with visual stress syndrome?
Yes, definitely. I see about 20% of patients come in with blurry vision, and we try all the visual aids that's possible, but they end up not having any prescription. They have perfect visual capabilities, binocular functioning, but they still can't see comfortably, and they're still experiencing blur and moving targets. So yes, a lot of people, I don't want to say a lot, but most people with visual stress don't necessarily have a prescription. And that's what makes it so amazing, that we can help them, but it's not prescription related.
So, Annelize, what are the most common signs and symptoms of visual stress? If it's not a visual problem, what would be the signs that we must look out for?
It's very similar to someone that has visual problems, and that's why they come to optometrists to find out what is wrong. So it's blurring of words. Children don't know words aren't supposed to be moving or causing rivers or floating off the page if it's really bad. Children don't know it's not normal because that is their normal. Headaches, very frequent headaches when they're very sensitive to lights, walking in a busy area, like in a mall situation, too many movement things like people moving past or cars driving past can cause these visual symptoms as well. So the main things are the headaches, very regular headaches, blurring of vision, and then sensitivity to light. So those are the three things that I would say is probably the top three symptoms most people will have.
So how would this affect the child's reading and writing and their learning ability?
Reading is what we test because it's got parameters that we can test. A child of a certain age is supposed to read at certain words per minute. So reading is mostly what we test, but this relates to everything else, whether it's maths. Maths also has reading, talking verbally, telling a story, but I'll focus on reading for now. If a patient is struggling with blurry vision, then they will struggle to read and they will read very choppy. So they'll read word for word, almost letter for letter, not the sight word or the few 4 or 5 letters together. They'll read it really spelling out style. If it's moving words or things like that, then they will skip words and skip lines and just get confused when they're reading. This in itself lowers their ability to understand what they're reading because they're reading words all over the page and they don't necessarily make a sentence because they're just reading words. They're not reading a story because it's not becoming part of a story.
So, Annelize, how is visual stress syndrome diagnosed? I mean, almost want to say a normal optometrist, our chain store optometrist, would this be something that they can pick up when you go for a normal visual test?
It is a new thing to optometry. It's old because it was discovered in 1980s, but it's not scientifically based. So a lot of people discarded it because it's not science-based. But yes, any optometrist would be able to pick it up because it is something that you're trying to help a patient to make it clearer or less blurry and help them with the photosensitivity that they've got. And they don't have a prescription. So yes, those are two things that we do get a lot in practice. And I never knew what to do for the patients because they're struggling. They don't have a prescription. You give them the small prescription, even though it's really small and non-significant, to see if that helps. And no, it doesn't help. The patient still has the blurriness. We test it with contrast. There are contrast sensitivity specific tests that we do to see whether a patient does have visual stress. And once we've done the screening to see whether they do have visual stress and how severe the visual stress is, then I will go over and do the colorimetry. And the colorimetry test is not something that every optometrist has, as it's quite an investment to have this equipment in your practice. So the colorimetry test is then how we define the precise vision tint that we prescribe to our patients. And that's a tint that we put onto the lenses. And some patients ask, but don't I see the world a little bit more pink or blue or purple or green or whichever they color have chosen? But actually they get color adapted. So they see the color of the world in normal colors like we do without the tint. But it's calmer and they can actually perceive better. And the whole feeling is more comfortable. So the whole lifestyle is more comfortable.
That is certainly the feedback that I have also received, that almost the explanation to me was that once they wore the glasses, they could just go.
Yes, yes, it's like a warm hug, my one patient said.
Yes, yes. So, Annelize, at what age can visual stress syndrome be identified?
That is difficult because I think schooling starts a lot younger and we try and test children a lot younger. So there could be false positives as well with what anything is. But anything from grade 3, grade 4, I would think we can start helping children, because that's when their studying start. Normal exams in normal cap schooling, they start writing exams in grade 4, and that's when most patients realize, oh dear, I struggle to read and comprehend. I don't really understand what I'm saying or doing, you know. And also with maths ability, if the maths ability is really struggling when there's word sums, they can't read, so they really don't know if you're asking about the apples or the feet of the dog, you know, because there's too many things in the sum that they actually don't know, make head of tail of. And handwriting. So in up to grade 3, kids get marked on their handwriting as part of their, I think, language skills. But from grade 4, the real handwriting comes out. So yeah, visual stress is very visible in handwriting, and then also your comprehension and reading. So your language skills and your math skills will not be up to what your capability is.
Okay, so in my case, it was reported that the students saw blue dots when they were reading. And you are obviously now mentioning that you can see it in handwriting, you can see it in comprehension. Are there other things that teachers can almost look out for?
Definitely seeing colors. I must say, I think teachers are getting a bit more educated with regards to visual stress, and that makes my life a bit easier, because the child is not seen as a unicorn child that sees colors and rainbows everywhere. And the colors and the rainbows that they see is really from the visual cortex, not making head of tail of what the visual stimuli is. So that it's just confusion. And so a lot of comprehension, they can't retell a story. They don't have a very good comprehension test. So they read, they can't really remember what they've read. Math skills, handwriting. Handwriting is a very big thing. And my own son, his handwriting was, it looks like he was shaking the letters in his hand and throw it on the page. And the poor teacher just had to make out whatever he was writing. So he lost a lot of points on his handwriting in those early years. And it's amazing how the handwriting just improved when he has his glasses on. So I think that's basically the top things that teachers can look out for. Unexplained headaches, blurry vision, colors, seeing spots. A child's fidgety. If a child is very fidgety and active, it's not always dyslexia and it's not always ADHD. If you've done the test and this child is still not responding, then definitely visual stress. Visual stress filters can help those people with ADHD and dyslexia anyway. So yeah, it's amazing how big the scope is for visual stress filters.
Yeah, you've mentioned dyslexia, and so I'm thinking, I mean, when you do a dyslexia assessment, those are the kind of things that you look out for. And from my perspective, I always suggest to parents, let's first, I want to say, rule out the physiology part. So starting with a visual test, I could just assume would be the best option before you go into, I want to say, learning barriers as such. It's often not the case. So Annelize, I want to ask you, what other aspects of life would visual stress influence outside of the classroom?
I would say more for adults rather. Driving, if you drive past trees that has that shadow reflections or palisade fencing, I know it irritates my eyes as well. If you drive with bright light and the palisade fencing is just shining and reflecting in your eyes. So for me, that's a personal trigger. Not that I have visual stress, so I can imagine someone with visual stress struggle with that. And computer work. So there's a lot of things happening on a computer screen that's just overwhelming for a person with visual stress. And I suppose then that will also go over to your cell phone screen. Your screen on your phone also has a lot of things, and you'll often notice that people with visual stress syndrome prefer to be in a darker world. So they'll dim the lights at home when they're reading. they will prefer dim light in watching television, and the phone will be on a very dim light screen as well. And we were taught as children, put on the lights, have more light, the dark is bad for you. And a lot of parents would say, you know what, come out of the dark and put the lights on. But there might be a reason why your child prefer the darkened room or the dim lighting room. It's because the bright light is too overwhelming for the visual cortex. And yeah, working in a mall, I've had a patient with visual stress that struggled to walk in the mall because there's too many people and too much movement for her, so she can't cope with that. And a recent patient as well, he said someone that's got moving hands in a conversation, he has to physically step back and maybe just cover his one eye because it is too much for him. So yeah, I'm still learning a lot of these outside world triggers for patients, but it's fascinating.
Yeah, I'm thinking that even myself, if I go to the movies, especially when it's a 3D movie, I almost have to cover the sides of my eyes because it feels like the light is coming out in from the side. Not that I have visual stress syndrome necessarily, but I mean, light can definitely make such a big impact on how you see. So,
Yes. So if you feel
and I'm
that
also,
and if you feel that and you're not a visual stress person, just imagine how much more someone with visual stress will be triggered and affected.
absolutely, and I'm thinking in the classrooms, I mean, classrooms usually have fluorescent lights, and windows and moving parts all the time. So I can only imagine how much this must affect a child's and then their ability to concentrate, because
Yes.
they're
I,
constantly distracted, but by whatever is going on visually.
Yes, definitely, Sonia. And I also think the use of the whiteboards. I know it's easier for the teachers because they can link their devices to the whiteboard and show the presentation on there. But the whiteboard itself has got more reflections and triggers for a person with visual stress. So yeah, the classroom is more. Yeah, there's a lot of triggers in a classroom for a patient.
Mm. So, Anneliese, before I learned more about visual stress, I know in the classroom, we often placed a color film over the child's worksheet or so on because all print is on yellow paper or whatever color paper because we realized that it makes it easier for them to
Yes,
read.
yes.
Why would they opt for glasses instead of just that?
Okay, the Erlen filter sheets is a way for the parent to test whether this is a system that is faulty with the child or not. Some is a little bit more hesitant with a filter, so it's a way that we can actually um, give this to the child to see whether it is improving the symptoms or not. I'm not very keen on the Erlen filters because it just covers whatever you put down underneath it. So if you're
Mm.
reading and you put it on the book, yes, it helps you. But when you're copying from the board, you look up and you look through a normal world, and then you look down and you see the Erlen filter. And sometimes that's more confusing for the person, especially when it's a very severe visual stress that they are experiencing. If it's mild visual stress, then yes, the color filter will definitely help them with relieving some of their symptoms, calming down reading, making maths more easy. It can't help on the handwriting, but then if you write on a colored matching paper, I'm sure that the handwriting will improve as well. But that's only then on printed stuff what you look at. It's not on what you look up an outside world. So all those outside world influences will still influence and have an effect on your symptoms. I suppose it's a better than nothing solution, and the visual filters would still be more holistic because it will calm down all the triggers that the person is experiencing.
Anneliese, I can add to that. I mean, we've used those, we just called it reading strips.
Yes,
If a child struggled with reading, the one of the strategies would be using a colored reading strip, and then from our perspective, it was more to assist them with tracking on the page when they read.
Yes.
But
Yes.
then the next thing is that we would see that the child struggles to copy from the board. And then immediately our thinking goes to it's the attention. Um, so not the reading necessarily, not eyes. It must be the attention, copying from the board down to the paper. So this is really very interesting.
Yes. Yeah. Because when they look away from this reading strip, they look up in the normal world. So then they can't read
Mm.
off the board because the
Yes.
reading strip is not on the board. So it's very hard. I think it's
And
very
again,
hard for children.
it doesn't necessarily protect them against the lighting and the movement and the
No.
things. It's only for, I want to say, for the page.
Yes, yes.
Yes. So is there any misunderstandings around visual syndrome that I think more people should know about? Or any other things that you can tell us about this?
Oh, I'm learning every day. I've been doing this now since October last year, the calorimetry, the other things, the Berlin visual screening I've done since 2019, and I'm still learning with all the new things that it helps for. So if you've had a concussion and you're getting headaches and reading and comprehension is difficult, then visual filters will definitely help. The visual filters, what makes it better, coming back to the reading strips as well, you have a lot more color options to choose from. There's about 100,000 different colors that you can choose from and make it specifically to yourself, where we only have 12 colors or 15 colors, depending on which system you use, of the reading strip colors. So it's so much more specific. And I think that's what makes it so amazing. Because it's not science-based, a lot of people are still hesitant to use it. And it is something that they will only see the difference once I put those lenses on. Then
Mm.
they can actually see and report back if it's like that warm hug feeling, if it does calm down the visual seeing. And yeah, it's difficult to convince people to come and have the visual stress because it is such a personal thing.
Yes, I wanted to ask you about the research backing this up, or the science that backs this up. But then again, if I look at my own child, I mean, whether science back it up or not, you can see the relief when she reads, or there's no more floating well, she always complained about the floaters and the blue dots, and headaches. Um, so I guess the real proof is in the feedback that you get from those actually
Yeah,
wearing the glasses.
there is science backing this up. So the science did, Prof. Atkins did this. They're still doing a lot of research to back this up, especially research with ADHD and research with dyslexia, how these color filters can help those people. But in the 80s, they've done a lot of research, and it's an ongoing research as well, to say why these colors do help. So it helps because it calms down the visual cortex. And the confusing part is that they can't say women with blonde hair needs to use pink, women with brown hair needs to use brown, of blue lenses, or things like that. There's no specific color to a specific ethnicity or woman or age group or anything like that, because that part is individual. And that's what makes it so scary for people, because I can't just go off the shelf and say, okay, you need a blue one and you need a pink one and you need a yellow one. It is individual. You need to come in and select your own individual color. And that's what's not scientifically able to be proven, to say, okay, a person with that type of personality and genes, etc., needs to use that color. But yes, there's science backing it to say color lenses and color filters helps the visual cortex to calm down. By helping the visual cortex to calm down, we can help people with dyslexia. We can help people with ADHD because their world is calmer. With dyslexia, their reading material is calmer. It doesn't cure dyslexia, doesn't cure ADHD, doesn't cure all of those other neurodiverse things. It's just another way of assisting them and helping them to have a bit more of a calmer environment around them. So I think that's where the science is not is lagging or faulting for some people, because they want to have a definite color for a person that can be repeated many times after. And that's not possible because it's individualized.
Well, Annelize, that is the case with all neurodivergence and all the learning barriers. There isn't a one size fits all. And
No.
you often have to go through a process of elimination. And none of the strategies and the things that we implement to support is there to cure. They're all there to support. So I think this is just another way of supporting the children. So if a parent suspects that there is something and they would like to get their child or themselves screened, what would be the process?
I start with a visual eye test, so a normal eye examination, so that we can eliminate prescription or determine the prescription if there is a prescription. I also do the binocular vision. Sometimes binocular vision problems can also cause some of these symptoms. And then if the symptoms still persist, or if I didn't get any specific problems, then I will go over to do a visual stress assessment. The visual stress assessment entails doing a screening to see whether you do have visual stress. If you have visual stress, then we go through doing the visual colorimetry assessment. And with the colorimetry assessment, it's the machine here behind me. You look at a screen and I show you the different colors, and we eliminate the distressed colors and focus on the more comfortable colors until you find something that you are comfortable with, and then we compare it in the real world. So to find out more about visual stress, there's lots to read about online. On my website, I also have lovely information that I've accumulated, and it's very easy to see for parents if your child struggles with visual stress and you are concerned whether your child actually do have symptoms. So I've got a list on there with some symptoms that if you do suffer from some of the symptoms like blurring vision, fading words, difficulty reading, headaches, etc., then you can already suspect some visual stress, underlying visual stress. So then we test for the visual stress test or the assessment that we do.
I think just to say from my side, the process that we had to follow with my own child was that she really struggled to read. I had her assessed, and they said cognitively and diagnostically, there really isn't any reason why she shouldn't be able to read. And it's only, what, 7 years later that we came across the visual stress syndrome. If only we did it much sooner, but so we learn. So we learn. So it was also a process of elimination. It was started with a difficulty in reading, and we had assessments done and things done and nothing showed that there is a reason why she shouldn't be able to read. And it's only when she joined high school and she could actually articulate and verbalize the seeing of and difficulty with copying off the board that we started investigating further. And then in our case, it was more of, can she actually see properly? Let's have her eye tested. And then obviously from there, it unfolded.
Yes. And I think when parents do struggle, because luckily we've got parents that's quite invested in their children these days. So they do all the psychological psychometric tests to see whether it's ADHD or whether it's dyslexia or any neurodiverse thing. And they do take their children for occupational therapy to help them with reading and handwriting. But when you've tried everything and you are still struggling, you still don't have an answer, then visual stress would definitely be on the top of my list to eliminate. And unfortunately, I'm still getting the awareness out there about visual stress. So it is a slow process, but it's an exciting process. So I'm really, really excited about the future of this, because the results of my patients are amazing. I can't stop saying it.
That's great to hear. And Annelize, I do feel that people are becoming more aware. I have recently worked with families, and I want to say the last 3 months, there were three educational psychologist reports that recommended a visual screening test. So it's good to see that even the professionals are referring the kids or recommending visual screening assessments as well. So I do believe that people are becoming more aware.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it's exciting.
Yes. So if anyone wants to contact you, Annelize, how do they reach out to you? We will also share with your permission, obviously, your email address, but where can they find you?
I think the easiest to remember is maybe to look up on the website. It's www.istudio.co.za. Either find me on Facebook or on Instagram, Longbeach Eye Studio. And all my information and details are on the internet, are on the website. So you can easily connect with me through that.
Thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us today. I'm sure this has been an eye-opening conversation to many parents. I know it surely was when I first learned about visual stress syndrome or ERLIN. That was the I want to say the diagnosis that first came to my attention. That made a huge difference in our lives. So thank you very much for sharing with us.
Erlen and visual stress walks hand in hand with each other. Erlen is just the American name for it, and visual stress is the European name for it. I use
Mm.
the colorimetry, which is the scientifically based from optometric parts. So that's where we first eliminate visual problems, binocularity, and then we go to visual stress. It is amazing to see how this holistic view helps the parents and helps the patients to understand what has been happening. It explains to the parents what the child has been saying, and the child is not going crazy. And the child feeling, I'm not going crazy. I do see blue spots, but it's because my eyes are going all haywire and not a calm message from what you see to what the brain perceives at the back. So, yeah, it's fascinating, and I'm excited to see where we're going with this.
Yes, absolutely. I will also echo that in my case, I mean, with understanding that made me not act sooner because my daughter has complained about this for a while, and it was my lack of understanding that said, you know what, not understanding what it means if you see blue dots or floating things or
Yes.
moving parts. I was almost just, yes, it will
Yeah.
figure itself out, but it didn't. So I'm
Yeah.
very, very grateful.
Yeah.
Right, so if you found this episode helpful, please share it with parents, teachers, and professionals who might also benefit from the information. And don't forget to subscribe for more episodes on neurodiversity, learning, and accessibility. Thank you, Annelize.
Thank you for having me, Sonja.